Afternoon, fellow legends. I'm Wilstuff. Yeah, I've been thinking of something lately. After trapping that spider wizard inside my PSP, I couldn't help but notice another 80s pop culture icon that also involves defeating ghosts. Oh boy, I wonder what that could be. Hey Pac-Man! Oh shit, this guy's 40 this year. What a coincidence, am I right?
Oh, Pac-Man. One of the first and greatest game characters ever made. While his arcade games are beyond classic, his transition to home consoles was really weird to say the least. And while other franchises like Sonic, Crash, or even Spyro suffered a similar fate, there were still some games that kept their traditional platforming. But Pac-Man's legacy, however, is even more batshit insane in comparison. I mean, look at all these weird side games like Pac-Attack, which is a Tetris clone with bopping music. Pac-Man World was more of a 3D-ish platformer, albeit a bit bullshit. I mean, look at this, it even had its own mediocre spin-off cartoon. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was a big fan of this when it came out. Hell, I used to watch it every day near the end of primary school, and hey, look at that, I even got a bunch of these figures from the show that I coincidentally enough won at a magazine competition. I mean, look at this guy even. His tongue's supposed to come out. And yeah, seriously, this guy, boy howdy was this just an interesting case to say the least, at least in comparison to these other guys.
Speaking of the cartoon, it was popular enough to even have not only one, but two video games based on it. Unless you count that mobile phone game that was sort of an endless runner, but 2D. And you know what, while I could have talked about good games on the 3DS, like 3D Land, Smash Bros, or even Ocarina of Time, though the Water Temple can still fuck right off, I'm deciding that, for once, I've talked about enough good games this year, so I might as well talk some Pac shit.
Side note, I also forgot to mention this PC game, Pac-Man Adventures in Time, was actually my first introduction to the yellow ball with legs and hands himself. I know, that's a shit description, but that's pretty much what Pac-Man is most. In fact, I also forgot to point out, he obviously eats. But on to the actual game itself, and first impressions, yeah, this cover art isn't great. I mean, it's not awful, but god, these close-up covers just reek of obnoxious and lazy. I remember this was quite a trend back in the mid-2010s, with a lot of animated movies being guilty of this bullshit. I mean, the back cover looks fine, and the funny thing is that the top tagline makes it look like it's saying, Pac back. Also, Pac-Man's mouth just doesn't look right here. If anything, it looks left. Oh shit, the game's already in the 3DS. Alright, the plot of the game is basically like every other episode from the show. The ghosts run amok in Pac-World, and you as Pac-Man must save it from Lord Betrayus, the show's villain. Although the cutscenes really suck balls. I mean, look, no voiceovers? Why not? Mario 3D Land had voiceovers, and that came out 2 years ago. I mean, sure, most of the characters in that game didn't speak much, but it's better than this. At least the load screen is cute. I like it. Looks nice. But to pour salt all over this open wound, this game is a generic 2D side-scroller. Why? I mean, as awful as Toy Story 3 was on the DS, at least that game wasn't as generic of a side-scroller as this. And if you thought that was lazy and uninventive, even Pac-Man's power-ups and his moveset is unoriginal. Aside from that, I mean, look here. On the bottom screen, shit, you can see there's fire, ice, metal, and even a lizard one that makes you lick things like Yoshi. Really, you're ripping off power-ups from Super Mario. And I get that was also on the show, but why are you so cheap, game? I mean, how cheap were those chuckle nuts? Oh, it doesn't end there. Because look, the yellow bastard flutter jumps like Yoshi. It's like they didn't even bother to base its moves from any of his other games, aside from the munching. And beyond all the Mario plagiarisms, the rest of the game is really stock standard, to put lightly. And I do mean stock. Just look at how generic these levels are. I mean, mate, even the power-ups aren't really all that special. I mean, look, a burger. No pork chops like Castlevania, though. And I get this was also from the show, but that's wrong. See, in the original arcade game, you're supposed to eat a power pellet, and then these ghosts are meant to turn blue. Then you eat them. How hard is it to follow your own series logic, Namco? Not really hard if you ask me. I mean, mate, I could probably make a better Pac-Man game than this. Oh, but that's not all, mate. Look here. In the options, there's all these pointless collectibles that are scattered throughout all the other levels. Most of these are things like puzzles that form screenshots from the show, but the other ones include character models and even vehicles, which for some reason exist in the Pac-Man universe. Though, my favourite one is the pineapple tank. I mean, it just looks cool. But yeah, all these collectibles just reek of complete and utter... What's that word? Oh shit, I forgot. Oh yeah, they just reek about the developers not giving two shits about the game's actual quality. That face says it all.
Well, that's all she wrote. It's pretty funny to think they took a somewhat mediocre, generic cartoon and turned it into a game so bland and unoriginal it makes Wrath of Cortex look more innovative. But, to its credit, could be worse. It could have been a bare bones port of an actual good game.